In a reading from Isaiah chapter 11, a shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the snake, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. On that day, the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious. This is the word of the Lord. Advent, this season of the church year in which we find ourselves, Advent is wildly unpopular because Advent is about waiting, anticipation, patience, and expectation. Put another way, Advent is about the opposite of the way the world works because we're impatient. We want results now. We demand immediate gratification. Homer Simpson, of all people, illustrates this for us. In the classic Simpsons episode called Mr. Plow, Homer decides to start his own snow plowing business. He even makes a commercial. It's complete with a jingle. Mr. Plow, that's my name, that name again, it's Mr. Plow. His commercial, well, it first airs on one of those local access channels right in the dead of the night before the test pattern goes on the screen. And after it airs for the first time, Homer says, "Now it's time to play the waiting game." He twiddles his thumbs for about 2 seconds and then states, the waiting game sucks. Let's play Hungry, Hungry Hippos. You see, like Homer, we don't generally care to play the waiting game. I mean, I get annoyed if it takes an extra split second for my phone to wake up from reading my face or my fingerprint. And I worry that instead of accepting the invitation of Advent to engage in a time of anticipation and a time of active, attentive waiting, that we, like Homer Simpson, distract ourselves, be it with Hungry, Hungry Hippos or something else. I worry about this because I think we can get so distracted that we can't hear the words about, let alone imagine, the peaceable kingdom the prophet Isaiah writes about, what we just heard about a couple moments ago. I like how it's put in the Message translation of the Bible. It says this: "The wolf will romp with the lamb. The leopard sleep with the kid. Calf and lion will eat from the same trough, and a little child will tend them. Cow and bear will graze in the same pasture. Their calves and cubs grow up together, and the lion eats straw like the ox. The nursing child will crawl over rattlesnake dens. The toddler stick his hand down the hole of a serpent. Neither animal nor human will hurt or kill on my holy mountain. The whole earth will be brimming with knowing God alive, a living knowledge of God, ocean deep, ocean wide." Now, I've watched enough nature documentaries to know that wolves and lambs and bears and cows and lions aren't just all hanging out and getting along. I mean, they're not going to get together and play cards tonight and drink a little bit of bubbly. And I know for certain that kids over there when you were singing, any snakes? No, we're not giving you cobras or vipers to play with when you're singing. That's just not the world we live in. Instead of a peaceable kingdom, we live in a world where a child, a youth, sends this text from her high school in Santa Clarita, California. Hey, Mom, I don't know what's going on here at school, but I love you, and I'm so thankful for everything you've done for me. I love you so much. Everyone is saying there's a shooter on campus. I don't know what's going on, but I love you and Dad so much. This happened just 1 month ago. Do we even remember it? Were we distracted by other things? Or are we so numb to school shootings that we've reached the point of just shrugging our shoulders when another one happens? Now, since our world looks so drastically different than what's described by Isaiah, we can rightly ask, where have you been, God? Don't you care? These are legitimate and good questions to ask. God can take our cries and laments. Because God's heart breaks too when the world looks so different than the peaceable kingdom. Well then, we can ask, why don't you fix it, God? Where are you? Again, a legitimate question. Yet if we know how to wait expectantly, we will likely know how to listen for God's response. Because if we're always distracted or numb, we cannot hear God's response. That's part of what I hear in this story about the noted preacher, author, and speaker, Tony Campolo. Now, Campolo would regularly begin his speeches and presentations by addressing the crowd and saying, I have 3 things I'd like to say today. First, while you were sleeping last night, 30,000 kids died of starvation or diseases related to malnutrition. Second, most of you don't give a poop, except he'd say a much stronger word than that. And then he'd say, what's worse is that you're more upset with the fact that I said poop than the fact that 30,000 kids died last night. Campolo's point is that it's really easy to get outraged at the wrong thing. Now, sure, it's fine to have linguistic standards, but really, what's more important, or even what's more obscene? And instead of targeting our rage at that bad language, we're encouraged to pay attention to the real problem, which is hunger and malnutrition. Because when we pay attention to that, we quickly see that God responds to the problem. But God doesn't respond by waving a magic wand to make it all go away. And God certainly doesn't cause the suffering as some of the very worst takes would have you believe. No, God responds in this way. God comes to us as Jesus Christ, saves us, and then trusts us to put our salvation to use, to do something about the problem. God has given us collectively, God has given us abilities and insights and resources beyond our wildest imagination. The problem is that instead of working together and harnessing these gifts, we're distracted and numb and off in our own worlds far too often. And in case we wonder where God has been, Jesus lets us know in these words of Matthew 25. Jesus said, "The king will say to those at his right hand, 'Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. Jesus, where have you been? Well, he's with the hungry and hurting, the lost and lonely. And if we want to see Jesus, that's where we'll find him. And Jesus, in turn, asks us, where have you been? And when we wait and listen and remain attentive during this season of Advent, we're not distracted by all that swirls around, but instead we can see God at work around us and through us. And God working through us is a powerful thing. And here's one example of why doing this together, why being part of a faith community can make a difference. Last August, Lord of Life started looking at the negative impact medical debt has on our country and more significantly on low-income families. Now, medical debt isn't something that anyone chooses because no one wants to have a heart attack or an accident or a stroke or cancer, but the cost can devastate the lives of families. And what we found was that medical debt has destroyed the financial ability of large segments of vulnerable communities, notably the sick, the elderly, the poor, and veterans. It drives many families into poverty, with over 60% of bankruptcies in the U.S. coming as a result of medical debt. But Lord of Life is working to help make a dent in this crisis. Because there's a reputable nonprofit organization called RIP Medical Debt that has worked nationally with churches, organizations, and foundations over the last 5 years to forgive nearly $1 billion of medical debt. Now, what RIP Medical Debt does is purchase debt from healthcare providers in the secondary debt market for pennies on the dollar. It's an interesting system that they've got. And earlier this month, so just this month, with a $15,000 gift from Lord of Life. See, we can't do it on our own, but together we can do this. But with that $15,000 gift, nearly $1.6 million of medical debt was forgiven for 472 families, which allows them to get their lives back, reestablish their credit, and purchase basic family needs. So this is one example of where you've been. And as people of faith, we can also say that this is where God has been too. We do it together because that's how God works best, in and through community. And it's a glimpse of the peaceable kingdom described by Isaiah. So this Advent, be patient and attentive. Let God make you feel deeply instead of being numbed by the pain of the world around you. Add your insights, abilities, and resources to God's desire for a world where there are no more school shootings, no more hunger, no more crippling medical debt. A world where all are safe and feel loved and cared for. A world of peace, the world God intends, a world of God with us. Amen.